Okay, welcome to the deep dive. You handed us this stack of recent sources, articles, reports, market data, mostly from today, June 12th, and a few from just before, like Juneteenth. And the topic is clearly the crypto market, what's happening right now, especially with Bitcoin and, the trends around it. So our mission today, jump into these sources you've given us. We're going to pull out the really key insights. What's actually driving the recent moves? What are the big players up to? And what signals are maybe hinting at what's next? The idea is you get a clear picture, right? Without feeling totally overwhelmed by all the data noise.
Exactly. And it's a fascinating snapshot you've got here because you see, well, on one hand, this market pullback happening right now, but then you look a little closer in these same sources and you find these signals of pretty significant long-term changes, maybe even some bullish signs underneath. Understanding how those two things kind of fit together or maybe don't fit together easily, that's really key to making sense of this moment based on what's in these reports.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this. I think we have to start with the most immediate news, right? The stuff in that CoinPD news article. It talked about a general downturn across the whole crypto market just today. It gave some specifics too. It mentioned the total crypto market cap fell, what was it, 1.68%?
Yeah, 1.6%.
Dipping down to $3.39 trillion.
Yeah.
And daily trading volume was also down 5.27% to $133.81 billion.
Right. And what those numbers basically tell us is, a noticeable cooling off on that particular day,
Huh?
a 1.68% drop in the total value. It's quite a chunk when you're talking trillions. And less trading activity, too. It points to, well, a clear contraction in the short term shown by the source.
Okay, and that CoinPD article, it also suggested some reasons why this might be happening. It mentioned slides in the DJT, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. Said that triggered panic in crypto.
Panic. Well, whether it's panic or just correlation, it does suggest something interesting about crypto right now. If, as the source claims, a dip in traditional stocks can ripple into crypto like that, it kind of highlights how linked these markets still are. Despite all the talk about crypto being separate, when the wider market gets jittery, crypto often feels it too, according to this report anyway.
So that's the immediate picture. A bit of a dip, maybe tied to outside forces, but then, like you said, there are these bigger shifts happening underneath. That's where the yellow news article comes in, focusing on institutions and Bitcoin. This bit is really interesting. Yeah, that article had a pretty eye-popping figure. It said institutions now control, what, 30.9% of the Bitcoin supply?
Precisely, 30.9%.
And it wasn't just current holdings. It also mentioned future plans. $800 million in corporate plans related to Bitcoin.
That 30.9% figure, I mean, what really stands out is just how much the landscape has changed. Think about that. Almost a third of all Bitcoin held by large institutions, it fundamentally alters the market structure. It moves away from that sort of original decentralized ideal towards something where, well, big players can potentially make big waves. It's not just thousands of small investors anymore. It's also these large strategic positions being built.
And that ties right into what the Bitwise CIO was quoted saying in that CoinDo.com article, the one from the June 10th interview. He apparently said corporate Bitcoin adoption is, quote, just beginning.
Right. And his reasoning, according to that source, was partly about traditional finance. He suggested that companies holding lots of cash and, low yield accounts are starting to look for alternatives because those old strategies just aren't working as well. And Bitcoin is popping up on their radar. So that $800 million in corporate plans we saw in the other article, that could be exactly this trend starting to play out. It's future allocation, maybe not immediate buying pressure today, which helps explain how you can have a dip now alongside growing long-term institutional interest.
Okay, so that's a really key tension then. We've got these short-term jitters, maybe linked to stocks, but at the same time, significant growing institutional presence and future money already earmarked for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. Let's look at other signals for where Bitcoin might be heading beyond just the price today or who holds it. You share that It's Bitcoin World article, the one using Glassnode data.
Yes, the on-chain analytics.
Exactly. And that article highlighted analysis suggesting, quote, key signals for explosive surge for Bitcoin's price.
Yeah, and it's worth maybe just quickly explaining why that's different based on how the source described it. On-chain analytics, like Glassnode does, isn't looking at, say, news headlines or what traders are bidding on exchanges. They're looking directly at the Bitcoin blockchain itself. Who's moving coins, how long they've held them, that kind of deep network activity. It's like checking the engine diagnostics instead of just looking at the speedometer. And according to that source, the patterns they're seeing right now in that underlying activity are pointing towards potential future gains. It's a forward-looking view that kind of contrasts with the current dip.
Interesting. Okay, so moving beyond Bitcoin now, your sources also touched on the altcoin market, specifically mentioning the idea of an altcoin season. That CoinDo article about altcoin season 2025 seemed quite focused on that. It talked about something called the altcoin season index. Explained it tracks the percentage of altcoins beating Bitcoin over the last 90 days.
That's right. It's basically a metric to gauge if money is flowing more broadly into altcoins relative to Bitcoin. And that source presented the index as offering critical insights. It specifically mentioned a potential breakout for altcoin season, possibly happening in 2025. So it's a signal suggesting the wider altcoin market might be gearing up for a run.
And we also saw some concrete examples of altcoin activity in the sources you shared. That Coinco article, for instance. It highlighted BlockDAG raising a really large sum, $298 million.
Wow, yeah, that's substantial fundraising.
And it talked about its price outlook, too, mentioning a 0.0017 price and a 26.78% ROI as reasons why that source thought it was a top pick.
Yeah.
Just for context, that kind of ROI, 26.78%, means if you'd put in $1 early on at that price, the article implies you'd have nearly $28 now. Significant gains being highlighted there.
According to that source, yes. Big numbers.
And that same article also flagged the XLM price outlook and what's happening with A by X price action, so specific coins getting attention. Then there was another piece from BTC Wire about HELLO Labs. It detailed specific upgrades they're making, like a burn and earn model, described it as deflationary, and mentioned a new multi-chain bridge they're rolling out.
Right. So if you connect those dots, even while the overall market took that dip we discussed, you have specific altcoins raising huge amounts, others getting positive price mentions, and projects like HELLO Labs actively developing their tech. That burn and earn model, for example, the source implies it's designed to reduce the token supply over time, which can, theoretically support the price by increasing scarcity. So you see this specific project level activity, and then you have that altcoin season index hinting at a possible broader trend. It definitely makes you wonder, right? Are these individual successes maybe the first signs of that wider potential altcoin breakout the index is suggesting?
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. Let's pull together the main threads from all these sources you shared from today and the last couple of days. We started with the immediate picture. A general market dip, maybe linked to things happening in traditional finance. But running parallel to that, we saw clear evidence of growing institutional control, that 30.9% figure for Bitcoin, and significant future investment plans, $800 million.
Yeah, big structural shifts.
Then we looked at signals, specifically from on-chain data via Glassnode, that seemed, well, pretty optimistic about Bitcoin's future price potential. An explosive surge was the term used.
A strong, forward-looking signal from that source.
And finally, we broadened out to altcoins. We saw the altcoin season index hinting at a potential breakout and specific examples of altcoins raising serious money, getting positive attention, or rolling out new tech.
So, putting it all together, what does this complex picture mean for you, the listener?
Well, it suggests the market right now, based on these sources, is really dynamic. You can't just look at the daily price drop and get the whole story. You've got these short-term fluctuations happening alongside really significant long-term changes like institutions moving in and these technical or on-chain signals pointing towards potential future growth. It really underlines the need to look beyond just the surface noise, doesn't it? To understand the different forces at play described in these reports.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, these were all insights pulled directly from the specific articles and data sources you provided for us to look at today. So maybe a final thought to leave you with, based purely on what we've discussed from your sources. We have this significant institutional control, nearly a third of Bitcoin supply. We have $800 million in stated corporate investment plans for Bitcoin. We also have on-chain data hinting at a potential explosive surge for Bitcoin and indicators suggesting an altcoin season might be coming. So the question is, how might the growing influence and the likely strategic actions of these very large institutional players affect how and when those potential rallies for Bitcoin or altcoins might actually unfold? If they do, something to mull over.
That's a great question to end on. Thank you again for bringing these sources to us and made for a really insightful deep dive. Definitely keep exploring these dynamics.